All right. Good morning. Hal here. It's just on 11 a.m. It is Halitics. So excited to be with you. And I think we got this thing working. I'm getting more and more optimistic. Got some really nice feedback from Shade in Monterey, just very supportive, likes what we're doing here, wants us to keep going. Well, I say wants us, wants me to keep going, obviously, and really appreciate it. I also was very, very glad yesterday when I got to have on Charlie Cooper. And I think that get money out Maryland conversation is crucial because we just aren't we can't have the change we need. We can't make a responsive country, a responsive political system, as long as money is in control. Now, Charlie and I don't agree on everything. We agree on that. We don't necessarily agree that the Democratic Party can be a vehicle, a vessel to take us to the better place. If you want to weigh in on that, you certainly can join me 240-283-7262. It's Halitics. It's March 1, 2023. And I do one thing I really like about doing this program is I'm becoming much more aware of contemporary events. I kind of lost track of what's going on in the world a little bit. And, I've been an organizer for our evolution for 4 years. I'm still working for the Maryland group. And tomorrow I'll be off, by the way. No program tomorrow. I've got to go to Annapolis in support of tip workers, in support of restaurant workers who are seeing legislation that would eliminate that sub-minimum tip wage, $3.63 here in Maryland, and would raise their minimum wage to $15. The theory, of course, is that the tips bring the servers' compensation up to minimum wage. That doesn't always happen. Doesn't happen in the lower cost restaurants. The discount sit-down restaurants like the Denny's, the IHOPs, where the bills are often $20, $25, and people there the customers don't always have a lot of money to tip. Now, that said, often the lower income tippers are more generous. I'm not saying because you're rich, you're a big tipper. But if you've got to count every penny, obviously you're going to be less inclined necessarily to give a more generous tip when you're going out for that meal that you worked hard for all week. All right, you can join me 240-283-7262. Still haven't gotten that first call. And I want to get it. I want to get that first caller in. You can see, by the way, my background. So proud of those awards I got, that you chose me best DJ in Monterey County twice. So excited about that. Also, that wonderful caricature that was done by the professional cartoonist in Carmel. And he drew that for me when I was at Chomp. All right, so let's get to our stories. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. You can see some of the stories that we're working with. Let's see if I can get that slide deck up. And we're going to start with Ukraine, because this is, I think, the biggest story out there. I really do. I mean, this is a war that could threaten to become, and it is already international. It's already multinational. It's really worldwide. China getting involved. Obviously, the U.S., the West, very involved. Very, very horrible, really. I mean, it's just a horrible situation. And we, in my view, and I think it's the right, obviously, I think it's right, or I wouldn't think it. I would think something different. But I just have not been persuaded that this war makes any sense for us, that this is in the best interest of the American people, or anybody for that matter, even the people of Ukraine. There are much better options than endless war, than fighting a war to the last Ukrainian that is, leading to, and you've heard it, the media is telling you all the time about all the violence committed by the Russian troops, the killing, the assaults, and the tremendous destruction. All right, so this is from last week. Russia, Ukraine, the West vow to fight on in a war with no end in sight. Why is there no end in sight? What's that about? You'd think maybe there's an end in sight. The latest battle in Ukraine, and this is updated this morning, 9:16 a.m., New York Times. I think you can read that. I hope you can read it. In an epic battle of tanks, Russia was routed repeating earlier mistakes. Now, if you read the fine print, maybe route is a little strong. It's a little optimistic from the perspective of the New York Times, which is all in for Ukraine, has become the voice of Ukraine in the United States. Because if you go down into the fine print, you realize that Ukraine is losing lots of people. It's a war of attrition. It's like Vietnam. It's where they just count the dead, and then whoever claims that they killed more is the winner of the battle. So it's nihilism. It's just flat out nihilism. This is a part of the world that has seen itself just a constant battleground, killing fields 75 years ago when the Nazis invaded, and it continues. Did I get that year? Did I add it up right? 75 years, 1941, 82 years ago, almost 82. In June, it'll be 82 years ago when the Nazis invaded, and killing fields for years and years before, when Stalin was, the great collectivization there, and millions of Ukrainian peasants died. And you can understand why they hated Stalin, why they hated Russia, why they greeted at first the Nazis with flowers when they came in, although that quickly ended because of the brutality, because it turns out the new tyrant was even worse, if possible, than the old one. But you can understand why the Ukrainians want any kind of independence from Russia and why they're fighting back. I'm not going to get into right now who's right, who's wrong. What I'm saying is we should be looking to end this war. And why? I mean, no end in sight. If you're Putin, I mean, are you that irrational that you don't recognize this is incredibly costly, that you're putting the power of your country, which has been on the wane at least since long before the fall of communism, aren't you realizing how badly things are working out for you? Even if the Western media is grossly overstating the success that Ukraine is having so far, and I think they are overstating it, given that there are other reports, say from Scott Ritter, that Russia will not lose this war. Even so, it's got to be a disaster for Putin. He's looking for an exit strategy. Are we going to give it to him? Apparently not. It's not going to happen. And you can see from Radio Free Europe, let me see if I can get this. And I thought this was a pretty, as reasonable a site as you're going to find, Radio Free Europe, Radio Free Liberty. And you can't really see that in there for some reason. Let me see if I can get you the quote. Blinken says he sees no sign that Putin wants peace. Well, have you been looking for those signs? Because they're writ large, Anthony Blinken. I don't think there's any question. Let's see if we can get that a little bit better. He does want peace. He's said he wants peace. He says he's open to negotiation. If anything, after the disaster that has befallen the Russian military, and I say disaster not because necessarily they're losing, but I mean, it was I think it was a foregone conclusion that the Russian military was much stronger than Ukraine, that they would easily mop up the Ukrainian forces, probably leave Kiev after they had conquered it, and move and keep Donbass, the eastern region, where there's a significant Russian speaking population that was being, or certainly perceived itself as being, harassed by, persecuted by Ukrainians, where there's been a lot of a strong independence movement. And I think the general consensus was that once Putin conquered Kiev, he would negotiate with the West and say, just stay the heck out. Don't, no NATO expansion, and I'll get out of Kiev. I don't want to rule Kiev. I don't want to rule a bunch of unruly Ukrainians, but you got to stop persecuting Eastern Ukrainians who are Russian speakers and associate with Russia and look east, not west. And there probably would have been some kind of a ceasefire, and people would have gone back to their daily lives. Blinken says 9 minutes ago, when I copied this, which was about an hour ago, so let's say an hour, 9 minutes ago, Blinken says he sees no sign that Putin wants peace. But Putin himself said not only that he seeks to end the war, which you could interpret to mean he seeks to end it by winning, by defeating Ukraine, but you could also interpret that to mean, and as he says, he is open to negotiation. He would like to come to some kind of a permanent end to the hostilities. So why aren't we? Why are we insisting against what Putin is saying, that he doesn't want peace, that there's no signs? I mean, obviously, if you say you'll negotiate, that says you want peace. That's a sign. Maybe it's not true. Maybe he's full of it, but it's certainly a sign. And for all the talk of how badly Russia's doing, and they are, I mean, it's incredibly costly to them. Their military, it's embarrassing on a military, from the balance of what a military looks like. They're in Ukraine. It's the battle is being fought on Ukrainian soil. The damage is being done to Ukraine. Ukraine is suffering more, ultimately. So can we please stop with, you know what he says he wants to negotiate? You don't believe him? Call him out. Say, let's go to the UN right now. Let's talk about it right now. Let's start a ceasefire right now. But there's none of that. There's none of that after apparently a win, a victory by Ukrainian and Western forces over the Russian tanks that's just concluded. Right after that, Blinken doesn't say, why doesn't Blinken say, hey, listen, President Putin, be polite, be nice, give him an exit strategy. Hey, things aren't working out as well as maybe you had hoped. Why don't you sit down with us? Let's figure out a long-term answer. And for all of those who are saying, well, the Russian troops are brutes. They're primitives. They're rapists. Okay, war is ugly. This is what happens. So let's end it and stop it. Let's stop the killing. Let's stop the brutality. Let's stop the assaults. And maybe we can work with Putin to hold accountable the soldiers who did violate the law, who violated the Geneva Conventions. Maybe that would even happen. But not if you're just going to say there's no sign of peace. So why are we not seeing any signs of peace? By the way, you're listening to the Halitics. I'm Hal. It's my show, Hal Ginsberg Show. Halitics Live, 11 to noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. No show tomorrow. It's Thursday. I'll be on Friday. So why? Why are we seeing this? Why the drumbeat for permanent war? What's going on here? And let's see. Okay, well, I think we see it right here. And again, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. Let's see if I want to get that date a little bit better for you and cover this thing up, because I got to get the slides. I'm still working on the tech. By the way, such nice words from Shade. Really appreciate it. He say, hey, Al, I know you don't like the tech issues. No, who does? But I'll be honest with you. I told Jay this. I said, yeah, I don't like the tech issues, but honestly, I'm pretty happy. I think it's going pretty well. I'm able to get good audio. You can see what I'm talking about. I think things are pretty clear here. So yeah, I love doing this and I want to keep doing it. So if you want me to keep doing it, hey, even if you don't, even if you're kind of ambivalent, I don't know if I really like that. How it's not that good. So what? Go ahead. No skin off your back. Click subscribe to my channel, Halitics. Click like, and we're going to get this baby going, because this is what I want to do. And I don't want to, I don't want to go back to a real job. Please help me out. Please, folks. Come on. Do me a favor. Click subscribe. Click like. All right. Why are we fighting? Why? What's going on? And are we fighting? Why is there a proxy war in Ukraine that the West is propping up the Ukrainian government? Why are we doing that? Because, and you see it right there, December 4th, rebuilding Ukraine after invasion will cost $500 to $600 billion. Think of all the NGOs, think of all the for-profit corporations, even the nonprofits are going to be collecting. They're going to have their hands out. This is, you know what, it's really, it's some kind of it's a scam. It's a grift is what this war is. It's a grift on us. Do we not see that? Why does it continue? All right. In the beginning of June, Bierd said, so that's the World Bank Vice President, Bierd, I guess, or Bierd. I'm not sure how they pronounce it. Bierd. It was $350 billion. Euros, not, well, see, first they're flaying euros, then they're saying dollars. I don't know. It's a little confusing. The euros, what, about $1.50 maybe? So whatever it is, probably a little less than 100. So what we're looking at, it was about 350 billion euros in June, and it's risen significantly to the higher figure in December. Why is that? Well, more war, more destruction, more infrastructure knocked down that needs to be rebuilt. It's not that complicated to figure out. And I'm telling you right now, that figure is even higher now. That was in December. Now it's March 1. And we just saw a 3-week battle culminate on Ukrainian soil, more damage, more destruction, more bombing we've heard about. That's what this is about. It's about the money. And that those expenditures, think of what we could be doing with that. Could be fighting to have every single American have healthcare. Everyone in the world. I mean, most people in the world have some kind of free healthcare provided at the point of distribution of service. We don't. We could be addressing the climate catastrophe instead of worsening it, or one of the biggest factors when it comes to emitting greenhouse gases. This war is a grift. It's a grift for the military-industrial complex, for all of its components, the generals, and worst of all, obviously, the for-profit corporations, the CEOs, who see enormous profits coming out of it, whether it's keeping the Russian natural gas out of Europe so the price goes up, whether it's the construction corporations, whether it's the opportunity to embed even more neocons and neolibs in Ukraine. It's all there. It's all right out there. And we, again, I believe quite strongly that if we pushed to negotiate an end to this war, we could. But if we did that, one of the conditions Putin would almost certainly demand is that the US and the West keep its grubby fingers out of the Ukrainian till and out of especially the military. The profit, and people would the UN, people would say, well, that's right. I mean, we shouldn't be profiting from this war. Yeah, let's help rebuild it, but normal costs, oversight by the international community to ensure that there's not all manner of scams and fraud and corruption being practiced. But of course, if the war just continues and continues and continues, and ultimately Putin goes home or says, I can't deal with this anymore, I'm leaving, maybe there'll be 1 million dead, maybe there'll be 2 million dead, maybe there'll be $1 trillion, $1.5 trillion, $2 trillion in damage, and there'll be nobody to police what the for-profit corporations, the politicians are doing. That's what this is about. Endless war is good for business. All right, 240-283-7262. Love to have you join me. You could be my first call. Hey, maybe someone's been trying to call me. You know what I realized? Sometimes I don't have my phone up. 240-283-7262 to join me. Doesn't look like I've gotten any calls, but let me just see. No, still haven't. All right, let's go to our next story here. So this is The View. And I don't love, by the way, the new, and there's also Anna from the Young Turks. Now, I'm not a Young Turks guy, right? I mean, I really, I'm a Jimmy Dore guy, and the Young Turks have totally bashed him and I think been really, really, pissed off at him because he's calling them out for all sorts of stuff. But look, fair is fair, right is right. Anna gets the story correct, and I want to make sure that, they get credit for this. So there's your story. Let's get this video on. By the way, what I don't like is this new YouTube style where when you put the slide in, you just see it. You don't really see the real video the way it looks. So but this is what happens when I'm doing this, trying to share this stuff for you guys. So let's go to the tape. Let's watch it. And this is on the East Palestine train derailment.
That's who you voted for in that district. Donald Trump, who reduces all safety. He did.
Do they showed up at McDonald's and those voters saw something on the ground that probably resonates in a way that they need.
But they need to look past the photo ops, these people, and say, who's doing the job here?
Joy Behar and the ladies of The View decided that shaming the voting behavior of the residents of East Palestine was really the way to go when covering the story. Now, of course, there was a tragic train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, and now there are big concerns about whether or not the water is safe to consume in the town. Now, of course, Donald Trump deregulated the rail industry, and so Joy Behar is trying to draw attention to that and then basically blame the people of East Palestine for voting for him.
All right, so that's the story. And I thought Kasparian did a pretty darn good job there. I appreciated what she had to say there. She clearly was dismissive of Behar's ugly tactic of blaming the victim. Folks who are not doing particularly well, these rural voters, yes, many of them voted for Trump. And I thought there was a good comment from, is it Sunny? I don't know. I don't watch that program. I think Sunny Hostin saying, well, you got to look at why they supported, Trump. What did they see in him? And Behar completely dismissive of that. But there's an underlying narrative there. There's an underlying theme that I want to get to in a minute about the deregulation, which is terrible. But there's a theme or a theory or an assumption that Trump's deregulatory order, which did away with an Obama-era rule, was behind this derailment, that Trump, by the deregulation action, caused, took an action that, had it not been taken, the derailment wouldn't have occurred. We'll get to whether that's true or not, whether that's accurate or not. But first, it's ugly what Behar did. People vote for candidates for all manner of reasons. And to blame a group of people, many of whom, by the way, didn't vote for Trump. It's not like everyone in East, she says Palestine. I thought it was Palestine, but I'll go with Palestine. I've heard it pronounced both ways. I don't live there. Plenty of people in East Palestine and Eastern Ohio did not vote for Trump. And they're just as harmed by this derailment as the people who did. But lots of people voted for Bill Clinton who did really bad things for them. Lots of working people voted for a guy who sent jobs, millions of them, overseas or south of the border or north of the border. Is it their fault because they thought Clinton was going to be on their side? Is it the fault of people in East Palestine, Ohio, who did vote for Trump because they believed him when he took the side of unions and said, hey, you're not going to have to leave. You don't have to sell your house. GM isn't going to care. Is not going to send jobs overseas. Those trade deals that have been so bad for your community, you're not going to have more of them. I was against the war in Iraq before Clinton even thought to say anything negative about it, who cheerled it. Are they wrong because they chose Trump's more peaceful, more pro-peace message than Clinton's? I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to say that. They had two really bad choices in 2016, and they made one of the two bad choices if they voted for Trump. I'm not going to bash them for it. I do bash people who voted for Hillary over Bernie, because that was not acceptable. So Behar, who, by the way, is incredibly privileged. I mean, what a friggin' nerve for her to be on her show. She's got all the clean water she could ever want. She's a multi-millionaire through her program. And she's going to go out there and bash people who don't have clean drinking water. Is that going to work? Is that a good story? I didn't play the whole clip from TYT, but to give them also credit, this is a crazy, quote, strategy. That doesn't work.
That's who you voted for in that district. Donald Trump, who reduces all safety. He did in those days.
That wasn't Sunny Hassan. Yeah, I have a bit of an issue with the, there we go. Yeah, that is one of my tech problems. Sorry about that, folks. For some reason, you can't easily go from one slide to the next when you've got a video. I think if I press that, no. Let's see, maybe this will work. 240-283-7262. I'm changing it so that it won't do this. And I think I got it, maybe. I don't know. I'm not clear if there's a way to go from one slide to the next. It doesn't. Yeah, I know you love this, folks. Sorry about that. I guess you just have to mute her. That is one weakness in the software that I'm using. All right, 240-283-7262 if you want to join me. You can hear me. So did Trump's deregulation cause the derailment? And to be, well, it's not about being fair, right? It's about being honest. It's about telling the truth. And it would seem that it didn't. Now, I'm not defending Trump, but there you go. February 28, in response, National Transit Safety Board chair contradicts posts that wrongly claim Trump to blame for Ohio train wreck. So he's not to blame. The chair says, no, it wasn't Trump's decision to do away with an Obama era rule that caused it. So let's go to what may have caused that train wreck. And you'll see here, I posted it. There was this ECP, electronic controlled pneumatic brake rule, that Obama had, I guess it was recommended. And I believe it was also in place when Trump became president, and he ultimately repealed it. The ECP braking rule would have applied only to high hazard flammable trains. So even during Obama's presidency, that rule, which was in place, wouldn't have stopped it. Why? I thought that was a flammable train. You saw the fire. It sure looked like it was flammable. There was all the chemicals in it burning up. So how is it not, did it not cover it? Well, apparently they would distinguish between a high hazard flammable train and one that's only a mixed freight train, which only had 3 placarded class 3 flammable liquids cars. So you have to have more than 3 cars with all those explosive chemicals in them to be a high hazard. I don't know. That seemed pretty high hazard to me. So the problem clearly is we're not regulating. One of the major problems we're not regulating, and Trump is to blame for that. But he didn't repeal a law that would have prevented this disaster, this environmental disaster. So we shouldn't say that. What we need to do is we need to champion smart regulation that protects people, and at the same time not allow corporatists in both parties to rail against regulations. They are able to persuade people that regulations keep them from having jobs, because people are so afraid they'll lose a job that might pay pretty well, that has they're part of a union, they get health care. Well, it's true. Regulations do increase costs in many instances. In the long run, they save society billions, trillions. They would have saved us this East Palestine derailment if they had been in place. But in the moment, corporations are like, oh no, I have to spend more money. I got to put in these special electronically controlled pneumatic brakes, which are really expensive. So the argument that the corporatists can make to poor, struggling, and working people, especially working people, is your job could be at risk if we allow the government to get too involved in our industry. So what's the solution? No one should be that dependent on a job for a decent life. Yeah, okay. I lose my job. That sucks. But I still don't want a train derailing in my town and contaminating the water and destroying the land where there's farms and cattle. No, I'll tell you what. If I have to lose my job, at least I won't lose healthcare. At least my kid will still be able to go to a good college because they're doing really well in high school, and college is, there's no debt. It's debt free now. And my home is, protected. There's lots of other jobs because we stopped the offshoring and outsourcing. So yeah, all right, I'll risk losing this job because it's worth it to protect my hometown. That's what happens if you have a society where there's a real measure of equality, economic justice. No one's too rich, no one's too poor. Then you have good regulations. Then people are willing to support regulations. Obviously, we've gone in the absolute wrong direction. So, in a narrow sense, Trump is not to blame for that derailment because the rule that he repealed wouldn't have prevented this anyway. That train wasn't quite dangerous enough to need or to have ECP required under the old rules, electronically controlled pneumatic brakes, under the old rules. But it should have, right? I mean, of course, it should have. He's to blame for not bringing that up, for not making it a bigger part of the for not. I mean, Trump is against regulation, but he's to blame for that reason alone. I mean, to make regulation not even a possibility. But I didn't hear any Democrats talking about this. Maybe they were. I didn't hear them talking about it. It's a political stunt for both parties. Trump is out there, showing empathy for the people, and it's a good political move. He's right to do that. And the Democrats are trying to blame him for repealing a rule that wouldn't have stopped this anyway. All right, 240-283-7262. Got a few more stories here to go through, and let's see. There's Woody. So I wanted to play this. I think this is really funny. I love this story. I think it's great. Let's see if we can get the audio going because I muted it before. We'll see if we can get it.
Okay, so the movie goes like this. The biggest drug cartels in the world get together and buy up all the media and all the politicians and force all the people in the world to stay locked in their homes, and people can only come out if they take the cartel's drugs and keep taking them over and over. I threw the script away. I mean, who is going to believe that crazy idea, being forced to do drugs? I do that voluntarily all day long.
All right, so that is really funny. He doesn't get a lot of laughs out of it. People, they don't want to hear this, right? Let me change that. They don't want to hear about COVID and how it could have been a plot. It could have been, it's made. Look, do I think, and I posted this on Facebook, do I think that the drug cart, Big Pharma, whatever all the companies are, what they are, Merck and Pfizer, do I think they actually really got together and conspired to create the COVID virus because they were going to make billions doing it? Do I think they did that and that they deliberately released it into the wild? No. Do I understand? Do I get why people would think that way? I do. I don't think it's that crazy. And by the way, sorry, I just sort of jumped in there. That shouldn't have happened. It's not crazy. We know for a fact, by the way, we know that it was lab leak now. I mean, this is what everyone suspected for a long, long time. And the Department of Energy has just stated that. So it looks so ridiculous with that giant head. And I apologize for this. This is one of those little issues that we deal with now and again. So we'll see if we can get this back. And it's going to look funny. Well, it looks a little bit better. There we go. So I don't think that this was a conspiracy, but we shouldn't ignore the fact that the for-profit drug corporations have made billions off of a worldwide pandemic, and one that they were at least in part responsible for. I mean, they weren't careful. They were involved with that lab in Wuhan, and that's where it originated. So I don't think we should be completely dismissive or mocking the way you're seeing from the rest of the media. And why are they doing that? Why are they mocking Woody? Because they don't like what he has to say. They're not happy about it. They don't appreciate the exposure that they do so well, because others are dying because of death, that they profit from death. This is not something that Merck or Pfizer or Johnson & Johnson want you to think about. It's the last thing they want you to think about. And as a result, they're just going crazy, making fun of you for, and making fun of Woody Harrelson for making that point, for presenting that point to you. All right, let's see if we can get to our next slide. And I'm trying to figure out why I'm having something weird happen with my tech here. So let's see if we can get to the next slide. And I hope we're not going to get more audio. We'll see if that happens.
Woody Harrelson's
so here, let me just stop that for a second, because I think it's important that we cover what other media is saying about Woody. And this goes to my point that you can't say certain things, right? You can't let the elephant out. You can't point out the elephant in the room, which is the incredible profits that corporations make from warfare, from disease, from disasters. You can't do it. You're not allowed to do it. And as a result, Woody is getting pilloried. Not Hillaried, but pilloried. Let's see if we can see what, here's our good friends at People Magazine. And let's cue the conspiratorial music here as they cover Woody.
Saturday Night Live hosting gig has found the star surrounded by controversy. As the 61-year-old actor was inducted into the show's Five-Timers Club, he not so subtly shared some anti-vaccine views during his opening monologue.
I love the ominous music. You can hear it in the background.
With a joke about a script he recounted reading before the COVID-19 pandemic, he said the movie was about how the, quote, biggest drug cartels in the world get together and buy up all the media and all the politicians and force all the people in the world.
It's like X-Files music, right? Oh, this is so ridiculous. Let me see if we can get that video going for you. So let's play some more of this.
Stay locked in their homes, and people can only come out if they take the cartel's drugs and keep taking them over and over. After his monologue,
I mean, is that so ridiculous? I mean, isn't that pretty much what happened? I'm not saying, again, that we had the companies, the corporations actually deliberately created a virus and then let it in the wild. But we've seen newspapers foment wars to sell more newspapers. I mean, that's absolutely happened. That's what happened with the Cuban-American War. So it's not completely, I mean, companies will do anything for profit. We have seen wars without question fought for oil that are totally against the interests of the American people. So for Woody to speculate that these for-profit corporations, these pharmaceuticals, would deliberately create a worldwide pandemic and then force us to buy their vaccines, I mean, is it that outrageous? I just don't think it is. I'm sorry. Disagree with me if you like. 240-283-7262. Again, I'm not saying that happened, but we do know that that disease did not arise naturally. We know it was a lab leak. That's what the Department of Energy said with confidence. There's the DNA in that lab, in the COVID shows an accelerant. That's man-made. All right, let's go back to the video a little more. Just the ominous music. Oh, he's crazy. He's a nut. He's a kook.
Aired, the star was met with criticism online, with many calling him, SNL, and series creator Lorne Michaels out for platforming lies about the lifestyle.
I love that. I want to just stop that if you can read that there. And I'm going to just make that a little bigger because this is hilarious. I'm going to stop this. Ray, Woody Harrelson, and SNL. Whenever anyone spews anti-vax stupidity, I always think of the countless videos of traumatized, crying doctors, nurses, and hospital workers who were climbing over bodies in COVID's early days. Yeah, no, it was an absolute disaster. What does that have to do with? I mean, it was a human tragedy. So what? Why does that mean Woody's wrong? I mean, that just tells you that if indeed the pharmaceutical companies had something to do with this, it makes their crime that much worse. And we do know, for example, what was it? The Sackler family promoted highly addictive fentanyl, got people hooked on it, and made billions of dollars selling it. Is that so different from what Woody's suggesting? This is what People magazine decides to highlight, this kind of emotional appeal to get you to hate on Woody. I always think of the countless videos of traumatized crying doctors, nurses, and hospital workers who were climbing over bodies in COVID's early days. So yeah, F Woody Harrelson. I get it. But what I don't get is why you think that the fact, Balark, why you think that because doctors and nurses were destroyed over the carnage that they saw, that proves that Big Pharma wasn't behind it. Doesn't make sense. And but you can't even talk about this. Now, I don't think Woody's correct in that. I don't think, and he didn't say it. He was just throwing it out there. Why shouldn't we have this conversation? Why can't we have this discussion? Why must the media demonize, the corporate media, demonize somebody who says basically what a lot of us are thinking? Why must they do it? Because of the profits, because they're in it together against you. All right, 240-283-7262. Just a couple more minutes. I'm going to skip ahead, see if I can get to the next slide. So I want to get to the feel good. So this is the feel good story. We do a feel good story. And there's a lot to this story. So it's not all feel good, but I want to play this. This is Nina Turner. There's going to be a little bit of a feel good aspect towards the very end. This is Nina Turner talking about East Palestine. So we're back to the train derailment. And it does say feel. Well, you can't really see. Let me see if I can get that screen a little bit bigger there so we can see it. But yeah, here's Senator Nina Turner, and she is on CNN, and you can see the little flames. I think that means this is breaking points. Okay, so I want to be clear. I give the attribution correctly, breaking points, and this is with Sagar and Ryan Grimm. Crystal ball off this episode. All right, here we go.
Administration is not doing enough. I'm not pleased with Governor Mike DeWine, who actually drunk some of the water, giving people confidence that that water is okay, when in fact that EPA didn't do the deepest dive that they can do to deal with the carcinogens that are there, the air, the water. For the neoliberals who say that the residents of that area deserve what they are getting.
All right, so she's right there responding to the Joy Behar video, and where Behar said, well, it's the people who live there shouldn't have voted for Trump, and they're getting what they deserve, basically. Senator Turner, by the way, from Ohio, from Cleveland, not too far from East Palestine, both in eastern Ohio, but Cleveland much further north. All right, here's more from her.
Because they voted for President Donald J. Trump. It is abhorrent. This is about poverty. This is about poor, working class white people who are enduring some of the same things that poor, working class black people endure, whether it's Flint, Cleveland, or Jackson, Mississippi. And so I want to lay it out. The cultist behavior in politics right now, it is a sin and a shame that when people are suffering to this magnitude, you got people who will fix their mouths, to quote my grandmother, to say that they are getting what they deserve. What they deserve is clean air, clean food, clean water. They deserve relief, both.
All right, so I'm going to just stop that right there. So that is exactly correct. That is what these folks deserve: clean air, clean water to breathe, clean land. Let me get out of that. And SNT is completely right. Obviously, Behar and anyone who argues differently that somehow wants to blame the victim for this disaster couldn't be more wrong. And it's very, very frustrating for me. It's like, why do this? This is where I really feel like I'm losing it, because there isn't a recognition. There isn't that recognition that we're all in this together. We have broken ourselves down. And by the way, do I think we're all in this? No, I don't. But there isn't a recognition that poor, struggling, and working class and middle class Americans, ultimately, we're all dependent on each other. Instead, we have allowed the elites, the corporate elite, the financial elite, the academic elites to divide us by race, to divide us by nation of origin, to divide us by language, to divide us by everything but our common economic interests. And it's so frustrating for me. This is why I'm doing this program. I want us to understand that. I want us to join together so we can united take the kind of steps necessary. And yet it seems so impossible. Even the Ukraine war, we're not getting it. So many of us are saying, oh, Putin's evil. It absolutely feels like 1984, right? You're buying it. You're buying the propaganda. Putin may well be evil. He is evil. I'm not defending him. That doesn't mean this war makes any sense from the U.S. perspective. This doesn't mean that it's not way in the best interests of the people of Ukraine to have peace. It is. It's just not in the interests of extraordinarily rich and powerful American corporations, by the way, whose CEOs are not fighting in it, who have nothing to do with this, except to make money. All right, so I call that the feel-good story because Senator Nina Turner laid it out for you. It's abhorrent to blame the victims of the East Palestine train derailment. And it is a feel-good story, but it's a feel-good story with a question mark because she's not in Congress. You haven't heard any Congress member say that. You have not heard AOC say anything like this. You have not heard. And by the way, again, I'm going to bring up Summer Lee. She's not a household name. She's a congresswoman from Pittsburgh area, Allegheny County, close to this derailment, targeted by AIPAC, whose favorite Congress member, AIPAC's favorite, is Hakeem Jeffries. Somebody votes for Hakeem Jeffries for minority leader in the House. Why isn't she on CNN saying this? I love Senator Nina Turner a lot of times. I fear if she had been elected to Congress, she wouldn't be saying this. And by the way, and that's my final segue into, that's why we need a third party. The Democratic Party, the corruption endemic in that party touches everyone who's in it. And I don't care what kind of great intentions you come into Congress with as a Democrat. After a year, after 2 years, after 4 years, you're ground down. All your rough edges are sanded off, and you're voting for Nancy Pelosi and Hakeem Jeffries and Steny Hoyer. You're voting for bloated military budgets, and you're silent when good people are suffering, when decent people, when not so good people are suffering. You're silent because acknowledging their pain might not be politically expedient. All right, that'll do it for today. Thanks so much for watching, for listening, for being part of this. I want you to call